Hello YouTube, welcome back. Chris here. Working on a little project this morning. I've got this Pinarello, I believe it's pronounced GAN, and one of my regular customers brought this in. He's got a couple of road bikes. He's got this GAN as well as a specialized Roubaix, and he had asked what it would take to gear this bike the same way that the Roubaix is geared. So we're going to be swapping out some drivetrain components here, basically going to a larger cassette, a little bit smaller chain rings. In doing that, we're going to have to go to a mid-cage derailleur instead of this short cage one, and we'll have to change the chain as well. Over here on the counter, I have laid out the parts we have that we're going to need. We've got a new cassette here going from 11 to 1134. I've got a 50 tooth chain ring and a 34 tooth chain ring. There's our mid-cage Ultegra rear derailleur and a new Ultegra chain. So we're going to start deconstructing the bike here. Take all the parts off first. I'll lay them side by side with the new parts, let you see the differences, and then we'll put it all back together. So first step in this procedure, I'm going to take off the chain. Just makes it easier. We got to replace it anyway. So by taking this off first, it'll give us access to everything a little easier, and it won't be in the way. The newer Shimano chains are finally coming with a master link, so I don't actually have to pop any pins in this. I can just delink the chain and it's off. I'm also going to remove my rear wheel. This is a through axle. It's got one of these quick release through axles where you can do it with no tools, which is nice. Go ahead and pull that out. One of these guys here, you flip it and put it in the notch, and that's how you take that out. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unhook my rear derailleur cable. And remove the ferrule or the end crimp here so we can slide the cable out, and then we can remove the derailleur itself just like that. Now in putting these chain rings on, I very well could do it on the bike and not have to take the crankset off. But I'll tell you, it's a heck of a lot easier to just remove the crankset. You don't have to worry about getting any tight spaces. It's easier to torque the chain ring properly. And with these Shimano cranks, it's not like a BB30 or anything. It's just a regular threaded bottom bracket. So if they're easy to take off, and I recommend taking them off as opposed to trying to on the bike. This gives you better access to it, less risk of scratching your frame or damaging anything. So we're just going to pull the whole crankset out and make it a lot easier. Got everything taken off the bike here, and we'll lay everything out and show you how what we're changing out. All right, so here is all the parts off the bike now, and new and old. So we'll go through here and show you the differences and what we're changing out. First thing is cassettes. We went from an 1128 cassette to an 1134. So you can see the size difference, a little bit lower geared, better for climbing, and just a little easier riding. And the derailleurs, when you change that cassette, you have to change derailleurs. I believe the short cage, what you're seeing here, I believe goes up to a 30 or 32 tooth, at which point you have to switch over to a mid cage. So you can see the difference in length And what you're looking at is actually the length down here, and that just allows the chain and the derailleur to have more motion to it to allow for a larger range cassette. There's our crank setup there with the chain rings off. Other side, I left the pedals on, no real reason to take them off. I'm just going to be putting them back on. Here's our chain rings. So this is the new chain ring, which is a 50 tooth. They also indicate the 34 there, which is what it's usually paired with. And the old chain ring, which is a 52, and again they indicate 36, which is what's usually paired with that. If you are swapping chain rings, it is important to note that you have the right bolt circle diameter. So this is a 110 bolt circle diameter. They also make a 130. It's a little less common nowadays, but if you have 130 bolt circle, a 110 bolt circle is not going to fit on there. So you got to have the right chain ring for the right bolt circle. So with our new 50 tooth chain ring, we also have a new 34 tooth inner, and our 52 had a 36 tooth inner. So there's the inner chain rings, just a little bit smaller. Outer chain rings, couple teeth smaller as well. And there's our 4 chain ring bolts. The Shimano cranks only use 4. A lot of other cranksets will use 5. And there's our new chain and our old chain. So now that I've got everything taken apart, I'm going to start reassembling and get this bike back together the right way. Whenever I take off a drivetrain or a crankset, I always like to clean in here because a lot of these spots are really hard to clean when you have the parts on there. So if you can get it done while you have the parts off, it saves you a lot of headache. Always a good idea also when you're doing cranksets, make sure you're using a torque wrench. So, got my cranks back on, new derailleur, new cassette, time to run the chain. So what I do with the chain, I start by going over my cassette, and then down around the first derailleur pulley, other side of the chain, through the front derailleur, over the crankset, just like this. From here I can take one end, this end of the chain, loop it through this hook on the derailleur. A lot of people miss that, and that's going to cause a problem. So through that little hook and around our second pulley, and it's routed. The way I size this chain, I'm going to start in small, which means the highest gear in the back, the lowest gear in the front. From here, I'll be able to pull my chain together. And actually, I need to note, I need to get my V-limit set here first because this derailleur is not in the right spot. So from here, I need to find the spot where I can have tension on the chain and on the derailleur to keep the chain tight, but I'm not using too much of it. So I'm going to check here. I think ideally I want to take 3 links I need to pull. Now before I cut this chain, because you only get one shot at it, I like to check the big. So I move my chain to the biggest ring in the front. And the biggest ring in the rear. Get everything in place the way it's supposed to be. And then I check, okay, if I pop 3 links out, is that going to be too much? And in this case, it looks like it will be. So I'm going to go back to small and see how this looks with 2 links pulled out. We have a pretty wide gear range here with this larger cassette. That's why you always should check small, then check big. If I pull 2 links out, I've got a little bit of slack in the chain. Now, I can, with my V-limit screw here, pull this derailleur back a little further to give us the proper chain tension. Which that should do it now. I'm going to take my chain tool. I'm going to cut out 2 links. When you do this, you're going to want to make sure you have 2 male links facing each other, because, as I mentioned earlier, Shimano now is finally using a master link. I'll take the 2 halves of my master link, plug them in each side, link them together, and then bring it to the top of the drivetrain here and pop them together. So our chain is on. I'm also going to check here carefully because I still have to adjust both my derailleurs. I have to lower the front one and set the limits on this new rear one. So very carefully, as to not put the chain to the spokes or scratch up the frame, put it in the frame, check. Yeah, we will be all good here. First thing I'm going to do in tuning this is going to be to set my limits on my rear derailleur. The limit screw's purpose is to stop the derailleur from going too far in one direction, either too far into the frame or into the spokes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull this higher one out because it's not dropping to the highest gear. A little bit further. Take a little cable tension off too, it looks like. here I can start to upshift. And we need to get our lower limit set. They usually set these pretty tight from the factory because they don't want you to risk just throwing it on and dumping the chain into the wheel or the frame. So you usually have to make a good deal of adjustment with these. All right, there we go. We're pushing this a little, make sure it's not going to dump it into the wheel. A couple little tweaks of cable adjustment. We are hitting all the rear gears just fine. So we can move on to the front here. Don't have to make a big tweak here, but the gap here, because we have a smaller chainring now, is a little large. So we're going to lower this front derailleur down just a couple of millimeters. And we'll probably have to tighten up the cable just a hair to compensate for sliding that down a little bit. Not going to be a big adjustment, just a little tweak, but it will make it shift better. So we're just going to pull some of this cable tension, or cable slack out, get this front derailleur working a little better to adjust for lowering that. All right, and after my adjustments of my derailleurs, this one is complete, and that's a job done. So, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. I'm going to do more videos like this. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and we'll see you next time.